Hey guys, I'm Stephen Lopes, the founder and host of the Men of Bronze podcast. I want to thank you for joining us. If this is your first time, thank you for checking out the podcast. I really hope you enjoy it. If you are a return listener, thank you again for your continued support. I'm so happy that you're enjoying the content. This is the kind of podcast that you can join us to better yourself as a man, become a better husband, a better father, better entrepreneur. Whatever it is you're looking to improve as a man, this is the place to find great conversations that can motivate you to become better. My guest tonight is Santino Castellanos, aka Santino Mantino. You can find him on Instagram at Santino_Mantino. He's an avid outdoorsman who spends upwards of 180 days a year in the mountains. He is constantly mountain biking, fishing, or bow hunting, usually with his two boys. They spend a lot of time together. We talk about some pretty heavy subjects, some great content here. For example, him attempting to take his life at 17, failing, what that looked like, and how he came out of that a stronger person and a stronger man, how he kind of attempted to heal from the pain from the past. We talk about the rite of passage into a man and how difficult that is as a young man in our society, the awkwardness, the challenges you face as a young man, and the lack of support that we get. It's a great conversation, jam-packed, full of awesome content. We had to kind of cut ourselves off a bit early. We ran about an hour and 20 minutes, and, we don't want to talk for 3 hours, so we cut ourselves off. But definitely a great conversation. This guy has a lot to offer, so please check him out, and I hope you enjoy the podcast. All we ask, guys, if you do have a minute of your time, and that's all it takes, 1 minute, subscribe to the podcast, hit the notification, share, and rate. If you can share this with your friends, that is one of the biggest things you can do. If you rate and subscribe, that's huge for the ratings to get this podcast out there. It'll show up on more platforms, that kind of thing. So it's all we ask. We put a ton of effort into these episodes, and the content's really for you guys. So I hope you enjoy it, and that's the main thing. Enjoy the episode, guys. I hope you take a lot away from it, and I hope you enjoy it. So here we go. Hey, brother. Thanks for joining me tonight.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
How are you and the family doing?
Doing good. Considering all things with, the pandemic and the stay-at-home orders. Colorado, they've had, I don't know if they really know what's going on. They've talked about lifting it, and then they've pushed it back. But people are getting out and about, wearing face masks, obviously. And then for us, social distancing is pretty easy because we spend a lot of time up in the mountains, and we're right up just off the foothills here in Denver. I'm north of Denver in a suburb called Lafayette. Mm-hmm. And so it's easy for us just to jump in the truck and be in the middle of nowhere pretty quick. Yeah,
that's one thing I wanted to ask you about, because I saw your Instagram post this morning and you're having coffee with your wife in the mountains. And I'm like,
yeah,
I hope he makes it back on the plane in time to talk with me tonight.
Yeah. Well, part of doing the social media thing is that not everything needs to be real time.
Yeah,
now
that's
I have worked with people in the past that they feel like if something happens that day, they have to post it. Otherwise, it's not reality, right? So it's one of those deals that that was actually a picture from Alaska, and we were up there, and it's just a really cool picture that my buddy Lane took, and it was awesome because he was able to capture the fog and everything coming off. And you've seen my wall. We try to do my ethos for me, and what I do for Outtabounds is in everything we do, we want to inspire people and ignite people's passion for the outdoors.
Yeah, it was a great shot.
Thanks, man. Yeah, my buddy Lane's super, super talented. I wish I could take credit for it, but he was the guy behind the camera that day.
It's your wife.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly. Right.
You get some credit there. But yeah, it was a great shot. And
no.
I mean, if that didn't inspire somebody to have a hot cup of coffee with someone they love, I don't know what's wrong with them.
Right.
Because I was all in.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
So how much time do you spend? I mean, obviously you're an avid outdoorsman, but how often are you out and about in the mountains, that kind of thing?
It's tough because there's a lot of guys, they try to give themselves an average, but I definitely over 170, 180 days a year at the bare minimum. Now that we live up in Lafayette, my archery range, which looks like I'm in the middle of nowhere, but it's only about 25 minutes from my house. And you drive up just north of Boulder. Everyone's pretty familiar with Boulder. It's a world-renowned city that people make fun of all the time, but it's very, very liberal there. But anyways, you drive up the mountain, probably 15 minutes outside of Boulder, and there's a really nice archery range over there. So I'm usually over there 2 to 3 times a week, and then I have a couple other archery club memberships, but it kind of depends on the year. So I think people, or what time of the year it is, I think depending on what's happening, like if the fish are spawning, usually that's in the winter. So that's like January, February. We spend a lot of time on the water, and it's like after Christmas, and we're starting to get the itch to get back outdoors and do all that kind of stuff. And then spring rolls around, and we kind of fight the balance between fish that are spawning, and then turkey hunting opens up.
Right.
So then we start turkey hunting, and then after turkey hunting, we kind of get back into the fishing, and then summer's like filled with camping, mountain biking, and I don't know, we live life to the fullest, I would say. So it really just depends on what time of year it is, because we'll be mountain biking. Like now we've been hitting the trails a couple times a week, and then my youngest has started to do some golf. So I'm just managing so many different things, man. And the problem is like we try to be decent at all of them.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
It's just it's a lot of focus on that and dedication. And then as soon as the summer wraps up, like we spend a lot of time in the mountains where we're not camping, but I can double dip with that to where I can scout for animals, because archery season here in Colorado opens up for big game the middle of August. So when the middle of August hits, I'm pretty much gone from almost every week, at least 3 to 4 days till October, late October. Wow. Sometimes in early November, just depending on what's going on. But usually I come home for about a week, and then we start hitting like Nebraska and Kansas for whitetail, because then the rut kicks in there. And then if there's anything left over after that, like late season deer tags, and we're out doing that. So last year we hunted all the way in through December, and then I was able to do a hunt in Arizona in January. So it was just like year round.
Yeah, that's busy. What exactly is your profession, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, so I own my own business called Outtabounds, and it's an LLC here in Denver. But for a long time, well, the last 10 years, I've represented outdoor hunting shows, like raised money for their hunting budgets, sold for those shows. Yeah. Through that and that whole process, I gained a ton of relationships in the outdoor space. And then about 4 years ago, took a job with Outdoor Sportsman's Group, which is Outdoor Channel, World Fishing Network, and Sportsman's Channel. And I was there for almost 2 years, and then they had some financial setbacks, and they started with the first wave of like 34 layoffs. I think they laid off 34 people in one weekend, and then I was part of the second wave of that, where they laid off like 5 people, but I was like the new guy on my team, so I was the one that got cut.
Yeah.
And to be completely transparent, I went through I realized how much my ego was tied into that position, because the money was incredible. I was very thankful for that. It was what some people would call a dream job. I was still pushing Out of Bounds on the side, because Out of Bounds is something that for me, I have bigger dreams and hopes for that. But anyways, the result of that took me getting through just kind of cleaning up some things in my life and just getting a different perspective. And I'm like, okay, what do I want Out of Bounds to be? I don't know if I necessarily want to go sell for shows, but I want to create content for companies and help move the needle for them. So I just like rechanged my model, and I shifted it a little bit. And so currently I have clients, and then I get contracted a lot for video, photo production. We do some social media management. So I do a variety of different things. But it just kind of depends. Like I've actually stepped outside of the hunting space, which has been great, and gone into the full outdoor space, like, you know, with bigger brands that, I shouldn't say bigger brands, but brands that have a much larger footprint than just hunting. And that's been really cool, because they want to get involved. A lot of outdoor brands want to find a way to support hunting, but there's that PC element, right? Like, you know, it's a blood sport, what we do, and that can be offensive to certain people. So we're able to find a happy medium with some of these brands where we can navigate, like, let's take your brand and let's get content, or let's tell a brand story. And let's not make it about hunting. Let's make it about this guy's story who has a great story, and we'll film that or do whatever. So we're, you know, right now I'm building a lot of the foundation for that. And again, we'll take on, it just depends on the project, man. If there's a great opportunity, it's going to be a project that I can knock out in a month. You better believe I'm going to entertain it.
Yeah, sure.
Again, I work for myself, and but really we work for the customers that we have. Everyone thinks that, oh man, it's great, you got your own business. It's like, depends on the client you have, because usually they're your boss.
Yeah, that's pretty inspiring though. I mean, you took a crappy situation, getting a layoff, and obviously you made the most of it, and you chased your dream a little bit, and you're building yourself up to be able to bring those dreams even further for your family, right? You're building this on the side. You've got some other stuff in the background we were kind of talking about earlier, behind the scenes you're working on. You're obviously extremely dedicated. You're competent, so success follows you for sure.
Well, I appreciate that, man. Again, we haven't really ever met. We've talked via email, so I did a little bit of research, and I see the Jordan Peterson 12 Rules of Life. That's a great book.
Yeah, for sure. And I got my Viktor Frankl here as well. Man's Search for Meaning. I
haven't read that one.
Yeah, you should.
Or I should say,
it's a short read.
Okay.
Yeah, great.
I'm more of a listener. I do the Audible thing. Yeah. Just because
it'll
when I'm driving or doing that, I need to get on that. But I think to your point, it wasn't always that way for me. Again, I think that at a young age, so my wife and I, Cassandra, we had our oldest, Aiden, who's 16 now. We had him when I was 19 years old.
Wow.
And that was something change your life, a kid will, when you're not ready for it. Man. Especially when you got a lot of your own garbage and crap that you have to work through. Mm-hmm. And I think, and then we had Jaron, who's 14. We had him when I was 21. So I think part of my life, again, I didn't think I'd live past 21 anyways. So like when that happens, it's like I got meaning, I got purpose, and I got a beautiful family that I have to take care of. And through that process, I've failed so many times. But the thing that I've always learned to do, just because of growing up in an environment where I didn't have a ton of support, like my dad and I, we have a good relationship now, but he worked his butt off, and he never showed up at was able to show up at my games or sporting events. So I never had people really cheering me on. So I think not for anyone to feel sorry for me, but more than anything, I just didn't need it. Right. So like when you're grinding, I think people that grind, they kind of grind, and then they look up into the stands, so to speak, to see who's cheering them on. If no one's cheering them on, they quit. I never had that. Like, would it be nice? Sure. But because I didn't have it, I think it's just pushed me in a whole different direction of learning how to grind and just not care. And that does catch up to you. So if you don't figure that out, it'll kick you in the nuts later on down the road. But yeah.
Since we're talking family and a bit of your history, you mentioned something earlier when you were 17. You had a bit of a moment. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so I've gotten very comfortable telling the story because our church, our pastor wanted to share this story in front of our congregation, which I think that weekend, it was Easter weekend, and it's a big church that we go to. It's one of the top 10 churches in the country.
Wow.
So like 32,000 people online and at church heard my story. So it was like really putting myself out there, and it was super scary. But the short of it is when I was in high school, I got in some trouble. I was at a party, wrong place, wrong time situation, and saw a guy hit a girl, and it just brought back things that I saw in my past and some trauma that I had went through. And my hands were licensed because I was a boxer. And I ended up, beating up this kid really, really bad, and didn't think anything of it. And about a week later, my dad shows up at school, which was a shocker. And I get questioned, and this whole, like, literally when I got questioned, if they didn't hear this, they thought I just beat up a kid. They thought I was a kid at a party and I lost control and I beat somebody up.
Yeah.
When they found out that the guy had hit a girl, changed the whole story, but they were very cautious when I was getting questioned, they said, hey, if your story doesn't check out, you're looking at a lot of jail time, because the kid was in the ICU. And so it turned into me going home, and I was alone, and felt got my butt chewed out by my dad, and there were some words that were exchanged where he's very, I just felt like he was disappointed, and I was already kind of used to that. just because I knew he had his stuff. So like I was like a punching bag for him, verbally and physically.
Right.
And it turned into me being in a really, really dark place and saying, man, I'm not built to be in jail, and like no one really cares anyways. I don't really have anybody. So I have a 40 caliber Sig Sauer that I still have to this day. It's never misfired once, and I racked around in, put it up to my heart, pulled the trigger, firing pin hit the bullet didn't go off.
Wow.
And I was stupid enough to reload the gun to try it a second time, and I had this cheesy lava lamp next to my bed, and the round landed on my bed, and I could see it, and I saw that the firing pin actually hit it. It just didn't go off. So I just like put the gun down for a minute, and I like for the first time in a while, like I just put my head down, and I was just like, call it prayer, or just call it trying to listen for something, and this peace came into my room. And I can't explain it. I'm not like super spiritual, but other than like having a feeling of peace and almost feeling like somebody was telling me it's going to be okay. Like I wasn't used to like touch. So it literally felt like somebody was like patting me on the back saying, hey man, it's going to be all right. Wow. And that right there was like, okay, this is weird. So I went to bed, and 2 days later I got the call that all charges were dropped. They summed it up like, hey, these were drunk, dumb kids. They put a case against this other guy. He was over 21. He brought alcohol to the party for minors. So it was kind of like case against case, and his parents freaked out, and everybody just wanted this thing to go away. So it did. And about 2 months later, I was with a friend, and I cut off all my friends in high school minus one. And one of my buddies said, hey, I want you to take these girls on a hike, and maybe we can go do some rock climbing or rappelling up in Boulder. And that's when I met my wife, Cassandra. And like the second I met her, like she was the first girl that actually was a friend to me. Back then, it's like if we were hanging out, we were going to do other things, right? Like I only had a few things on my mind. So because I was like in this new stage and this focus of like, man, I got to get my life right, whatever that means, I just treated her as a friend, and we became friends for a really, really long time and spent a lot of time together until I finally worked up the courage to like ask her out. But like the first thing I told her was, you don't want to talk to a guy like me. Like I'm a piece of junk. I'm garbage. Like I'm a bad human being. Like, because she was super nice, and I interpreted that as flirting. So when she started doing that, I'm like, hey, listen, you just got to leave me alone. She didn't, and it was one of those things that we were able to connect on so many different levels, and she just. The biggest thing why it was so hard, like she was the first person. She looked at me and she said, like when people tell you stuff and they say it with truth, you can just feel it, right? Like you can see it in their eyes. And she just looked at me and she goes, you can do anything. And that was the first time I actually felt like I could do anything. So again, she's a beautiful girl. And then we fell right back into, like dating, and then started sleeping together, and just we weren't smart about that, but I think we had known each other for about almost a year and a half, and she came to my house and said, hey, I got some bad news, or some serious news. She didn't say bad news. I'll take that back. But she goes, and I'm thinking she cheated on me or something went really south, and she tells me she's pregnant, and I'm like, oh shit. Like, okay,
it's getting real.
So I said, So I was like, you know what? Don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. And we did. We got married. I think she was 5 months pregnant when we got married, and her parents weren't for it. And that was another tough time. Like somebody stood up in our wedding and tried to stop it.
No.
So I told you, man. So we could totally make a movie out of this. Yeah, for sure.
Crazy.
And, because I got a Spanish background and an Italian background. The Italian side, I had some cousins there. He only got a few words out, and then he started hearing hitting, and they covered his mouth and dragged him out. The whole thing. It was crazy. But our pastor at the time, he the ball dropped and he caught it and saved the whole service.
Oh, that's great.
So. But we made it through that, and with Krishandra's parents, we're good. Like I'm like they say I'm like one of their favorite son-in-laws. They only have one other one, so
yeah.
They don't have but I think the reason I tell that story is because like people don't, I think people just think like it rolls off the tongue like it's just a story that happened or whatever it was. But the people that grew up with us and saw that, man, that was a hard time to be 19 and to go through so much. Like 2 years before that, I tried taking my life, and then and that's a selfish thing. That's a very selfish thing to do. But like, that's just perspective is reality, and that was my perspective at the time.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of people's perspective when they feel alone. And when you feel like you have a bunch, like I've realized that there's a lot of men that deal with that when they feel that they already have all that responsibility, and then they fall that hard. Those are the kind of thoughts that can go in, and your mental health can go way down, or ego or whatever.
Yeah.
And then to not only jump into that, but then 2 years later, feel like you made a mistake by getting your best friend pregnant, and then having to have kids, and then worry about like, man, I don't even know what it's like to have a good dad or be a good dad. What's a good male role model? And you got to try to figure that out in a really, really short period of time. And you don't, like, it's just a process that you have to work through. Yep. And to go through that, like, it really was more of a testament of the power that, like, and the ability that, not like that Cassandra, like, that she has over me. Like, she's unbelievable. She's made me a very, very strong person, but just always wanted to be a better man for that. And like, it's mutual. It's definitely a mutual feeling on both sides. And I think I think because of all that, like when it came to like working and failing, it's like, well, that doesn't mean anything. That's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Like, I've been through a lot other stuff, and people have been through way worse than I have. So that's why I look at these success stories on, like, you hear like David Goggins and some of these people that have just, you know, they get to a point where they want to quit and they keep going.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that makes you strong.
Yeah. And that's the kind of stuff as men we need to consume is, you know, we need to hear the stories of these kind of men. We need to talk with other men and build each other up so we can get through these circumstances. You know, there's that saying, like, garbage in, garbage out. You know, feed yourself good stuff and you'll live a good life, that kind of thing. So yeah. I think that's really important, and that's why I love having these kind of conversations. I mean, I didn't know any of this before we got together tonight.
Sure. Yeah.
And I mean, I'm sitting here getting chills hearing you talk about your story. And it's so incredible. And one thing I loved is the story between you and your wife is extremely similar to my wife and I, minus the attempted suicide and early pregnancy.
Yeah.
And no one stood up in our wedding, which was convenient. Yeah. But yeah, I walked the garbage life before her, and you know, I always make the joke that women love a project. And luckily, my wife was up to the task, and she did a great job. And I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for her. So,
right. So, do you guys have kids?
Yeah, we've got two little girls, 3 and 2. They're
Okay.
14 months apart. It took us over 3 years to get pregnant with Adeline, and that was obviously pretty stressful. As a father, you can imagine if your wife can't get pregnant, it's pretty stressful. It's hard on her. It's hard on you as well. And then we had Adeline. And, you know, right after, Hannah was pregnant again. So that was a blessing for sure.
Wow.
So, and
that's awesome, man.
And looking back, you can always look back, and the timing was right. You know, we weren't ready to have kids at 20.
Sure.
So we had them. I was 23. Hannah was 21.
You guys are still young.
Yeah, we're still young. I just broke 30, so.
Okay.
So, sorry, we got married at 23. I'm wrong on that. We had the kids at 26.
26. Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, man, yeah, I'm 23. That's pretty young. Yeah.
But we tried. We tried at 23.
Okay.
Just didn't work out.
Well, but it's all in timing, man. Just when it's supposed to happen. And we've had friends that have had issues with that, and I can only try to empathize on what that's like.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, yeah, well, yeah, I don't know, the genes or whatever the case was. It was just, you know, I really think it was just God's way of saying, hey, here's how I'm going to straighten you out.
Yeah. No, and that's totally fair. And that's what I mean is, like, looking back now, we weren't ready. So the timing is always perfect, right? And we obviously got to a point where we were ready, you know, financially, spiritually. I mean, you're never ready financially, but, you know, spiritually, relationship-wise. And, you know, boom, here's 2 kids.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's a blessing there.
Yeah.
Have you always been into hunting, or is that something that came up later on?
Well, so I've always I started hunting with my dad when I was 5. Like I wasn't hunting, but I'd just go with him.
Yeah.
Bow hunting for me is relatively new, and that it's really hard to explain, but it's almost like it's like a different level. It's like people that just go out and they mountain bike and they just, maybe rent bikes, and then all of a sudden they, then you convert over to buying like $1,000 or $2,000, or well, heck, some of these mountain bikes are $7,000 or $8,000. Yeah. And it literally is like a threshold that you cross over. And that's probably not the best analogy, but it just, the idea of like, I would go hunting, and it's something that I look forward to doing every fall. We weren't successful in the sense of like harvesting animals from the age of like 5 to 15. And it was something that I thought we were cursed, but we would only go for a couple days. My dad he didn't get a lot of time off. He worked construction. So we'd go sometimes the longest spell would be like 3 days. And that's just not enough time, even when you're rifle hunting. And then we would always go to a different spot, which is not good either. You never really get to learn an area. But I didn't know any of this stuff. And then my grandma passed away when I was 15. And a guy from my church he just said, hey, like if your dad's not going to take you hunting, maybe I could take you hunting. But he goes, I want to make a deal with you. You come bow hunting with me and be my pack mule, and then I'll take you on a elk hunt. And I said, okay. So I went archery hunting with him. And the first morning he called in 3 bulls. Wow. Which was unbelievable. Like, this is the first time I had ever seen a wild animal with somebody with a weapon in their hand and a tag in their pocket. I'm like, oh, this is going to go down. He didn't shoot any of them. He just wanted to give me that experience. Wow. And he, this guy was a mature hunter, so he just passed on them. He goes, no, those are younger bulls. I want to shoot a mature bull. And I was like, you're crazy. Like, shoot a cow or whatever. And
this is the moment.
Yeah. And so he ended up not being successful on that hunt. But then about a month later, he took me second rifle season, which is usually middle of October. And opening morning, I shot my first cow elk. And after that, it was incredible. So he had given me like permission. He goes, hey, man, like if it's just you and your parents or you and your dad or a buddy, you can come to this spot. And every year I would just do the weekend warrior thing. And I'd shoot a cow elk and I'd put meat in the freezer. And I didn't care about anything else but that for a long time. But because of having kids so young, I didn't have time. Like there were moments where I was working 3 jobs just to make ends meet, and working a normal full-time job and then doing some side hustles. So hunting for me wasn't, as much as I wanted to do it more and more, like I just wasn't able to. So then I had a guy that good friend of my wife's family brought this gentleman down. His name's Levi Morgan, one of the best archers in the world. And Levi and him were filming a hunting show. It was Levi's television show. So they drove up to Wyoming. They flew into Denver, and a lot of guys do this. They'll fly into Denver if they're from the Midwest, and then they drive up to Wyoming and they go chase pronghorn in August. So they tagged out early, and they had a few days, and that's when I got to meet Levi and my buddy Jansen. They were hanging out, and we started talking about shooting a bow, and they both encouraged me like, hey, you should probably start shooting a bow. And I was like, well, it's kind of like a white guy sport, or there's no community here for that. Like, where am I going to start? And he goes, well, there's actually a couple really, really good guys that are great archers, and they live here in Denver. So they got me connected with those guys. And hunting season, by the time that whole process started where I actually considered buying a bow, was already the end of November. So it was like a 3 or 4 month process for me to get my head wrapped around it and say, okay, I'm going to commit to this.
Sure.
And then my buddy Phil Mendoza sold me my first bow, and then I realized how expensive archery could be, and then I had all this stuff, and before I knew it, I was ready to start shooting tournaments because hunting season was over. So I literally was at the shop. I have a problem, like I told you earlier, like if I decide to get into something, I'm all in, and I want the best of the best. I want to take out all the pieces of the equation that I could ever blame equipment and then just blame myself. So I went all in, which it was an investment, but I just really fell in love with it. Like I've always loved competing, and you get to a certain point where you your body, it's just different. Like, I still train hard and I do all that, but I just, sparring and doing all the stuff. Like I ran fitness gyms in my early 20s all the way almost till I was about 30, and I loved it, but you literally walk around feeling broken all the time. Yeah. Just because you're sore doing jiu-jitsu and getting hit and all that kind of stuff. But shooting a bow was a completely it was hard, but it was just a different hard, and I really, really loved that and fell in love with it. And that was about 12 years ago. And that's pretty much when I went to an archery trade show, which is usually in the Midwest. And then I realized, oh, you can make money doing this. And I'm in sales, so I can figure this out. So I shifted again, and I decided to take a leap of faith and felt like the man upstairs was like, hey, I want to put you in this spot. And I did really, really well for several years. And again, like I'm still repping and helping out brands in the outdoor space doing what I want, but it's really given me a whole different perspective on like the outdoors. When I say it's changed my life, it's not just an emotional statement. Like it really has. And the way that we've raised our sons and just the things that we've been able to do, like we eat, breathe, live it, whatever it is, and we're outside doing it, like it's changed our lives.
Yeah, that's super powerful. It's actually something that it's kind of been on my mind lately as well. As I've always kind of said, I'm not really a country person. I live in a small town here in Canada, about 5,000 people, and we live in town. So we've always kind of said, we're townies, not country folk. We're townies. But as I'm getting older, I'm kind of having that crave, and as I'm getting more connected with men like yourself and trying to connect and be a better man myself, I'm kind of craving like a little more space to create. To spend more time outside, to adventure, that kind of thing. So it's something that's kind of on my heart recently is like, do we move to the country? But I really need my good internet. And
no, well, you can get good internet.
We don't always have that.
So,
but
right,
it's a bit of a struggle. But anyway, it's just something that's on my mind recently is getting some more space. So I love that you said that. Like being outside, it's actually incredible. Getting into hunting. Something that I'm trying to do right now. Just bought my first shotgun actually a couple weeks ago.
What did you buy?
I got an Armsen P612. So it's a Turkish gun.
Okay.
Pretty inexpensive. Cool. It's $400, $450 taxes in Canadian. So
there you go, man.
So yeah, I mean, for me it's my first gun, so looking forward to that. But then my hunting license has been canceled because of COVID. Okay. So I was supposed to get that a couple weekends ago, but that's been canceled. So waiting on that. But my brother-in-law, Hannah's brother, is a hunter. So hopefully we'll get outdoors with him a little bit and kind of stretch myself, because that's not, my family's not like that at all.
Okay.
My family's from the city.
All right.
My dad grew up as like an 80s bodybuilder, that kind of thing. He was a gym owner for 27 years. He's not really a country person at all. So hunting, that kind of thing was never part of my life growing up at all. So, but I'm really kind of wanting to kind of sink my claws in that now. So looking forward to it.
Do you guys go camping or do anything like that?
We did do camping growing up, and it is something that we're going to start doing now that the girls are getting a little bit older. We were hoping to go this summer. We'll see if we get that opportunity. But yeah, I grew up camping. Hannah grew up doing lots of traveling. They did like all of Europe, all that kind of stuff. But we were campers, so that kind of thing is not foreign. And looking forward to doing that with the family, because those are some of my best memories.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I think when we started, Cassandra and I, we would go camping, like we'd ditch school or go fishing for the day or whatever when we first started dating. But getting, pregnant so young with Aiden, it kind of put the brakes on everything. But I think we took him on his first camping trip when he was 2, and it worked out okay. But then when they're in that toddler phase and they're kind of, walking around with the head bob, like it's like you can't be at peace at all unless you put foam pads around trees and rocks, because you feel like they're just going to crack their head open. So it's definitely a slower process, but right now Aiden's 16 and 14 and they drive up and meet us, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think, like I said, we're kind of hoping to get out this summer, But
Yeah.
we're not against, taking 1 or 2 more years till they're, 4 and 5 or something like that, where they can kind of handle themselves a little bit more.
Sure.
Even sleeping, Ava is 2 years old.
Okay.
I'm not sure how camping in a tent's going to go with the little one. It could go either way. But,
May make sense to rent like a small cabin and do that.
Yeah, that might be an option. We did tents growing up, and then when I was about, I guess 7, my parents bought a tent trailer.
Okay.
And that was awesome. I love the tent trailer because it's big enough that you can get inside when it's raining, and it's got a heater and that kind of thing. But it's not big enough that you spend all your time in there.
Yep.
So we really appreciated that because it's like, it's kind of the perfect balance of like glamping and camping.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, we ended up splooging a little bit, and it's the first time because we did tents all the way until the boys were, just till about 2 years ago, and then we bought a camper, and we got like a nice 27-foot camper. It has almost like for me for hunting, like when I'm gone like the whole month of September, it's perfect. It's like home away from home.
Yeah.
And I love it. But I'll get into like a campground where there's plug-ins and you pretty much are just living in your trailer, which is really nice, but you're gone all day. And I just bring DVDs, which even that's starting to become old school as DVDs. But, anyways, the camper thing is super fun, but even when we do our summer trips, the boys will still set up a tent or we'll do teepees or whatever and just lay on the dirt and enjoy that. But there's a book when you're talking about this like desire and this craving, John C. Eldridge, I think it's called Wild at Heart, I believe. And that's a great book, but it really goes into like the anatomy of like boys. Like when you're a boy, like my mom, when I grew up, she was very like, hey, don't touch that. I didn't have a lot of like, I was forced to grow up very, very quick. And I think people, I'm learning to laugh again. I'm learning to smile again, but with the beard and the, just the way I look, people think I'm a really serious person and I'm not. I just have like a super serious look. And it's funny, like when I smile, like I've had these like big muscular guys are like, dude, I just love when you smile. And I'm like, man, that's so, don't tell me that.
It's
like
a little bit weird.
It's a little weird, right? And they're like, they're like, you just don't look so serious. And I'm like, so I'm trying to pay attention to that because I've heard it from like 2 different random guys that I respect. And the fact that they would say that, like they're like, dude, I want to punch myself for saying this, but I want to tell you. So I'm trying to be more mindful of like smiling and just enjoying that. But they talk about that in Wild at Heart. Like if you don't let boys be boys, or even like your kids, like I think I was a little too strict, but when you meet our boys, I say it pays off because they're like some of the most respectful kids. They'll go and shake your hand, look at you eye to eye, like they are incredible young men, but I've always still tried to encourage them to like, get their hands dirty, scrape their knees, get outdoors, because when you don't have that opportunity or you miss out on it, it's not that you can't get it. Like for me, I'm just getting it now. Like, again, I grew up hunting in a different way where it was almost like the express checkout and it never was enough. And even though I felt like we were terrible at it, now I'm just... I would say I am literally just making up for lost time. And that's probably why I'm so into the bow hunting thing and why it's become part of what I do for a living and what I try to do as much of as I can.
Yeah, I think, getting your boys outside and teaching them that, being rough and tumble, that kind of thing, even for girls, crucial, to have that connection with your own self and with others, having a sibling is incredible. I've got one sister, she's 4 years older than I am, so we never had that connection growing up. But, even now, I was just telling someone yesterday, and they said, oh, like, do you let your girls ever go outside by themselves? They're 2 and 3. I said, yeah, absolutely. The backyard is fenced in, and when we make dinner, we stick them outside on the back deck, and they've got a sandbox, they've got a playhouse, and go nuts. We crack the window so we can hear when someone gets hurt. And when they get hurt, we yell out the window that you're fine and get up. Yeah. And they are fine.
Sure.
If you go out there and you run out and you pick them out, you make a soap opera out of it, they're going to realize that, they need to be coddled every time they scuff their knee. And,
for sure.
I'm not ashamed to say if you look at my girls' legs, they're 2 and 3 years old. If you look at their legs, it looks like we abuse them. But they're just living life.
Right.
They're scuffed, they're bruised, but they love running around, tumbling, falling, and they're tough girls. It's just I put on my I guess it wasn't on my story. I sent a video over Snapchat or something the other night. So like, is it weird that our girls do like a minute and a half of like what they call kung fu before bed every night, and they basically just fight each other for a minute, and every night they come up and they say, "Oh, it's time for kung fu." And I'm like, "All right, go nuts!" And they just fight for a minute, and
that's awesome.
They love it, and we love it, and get that last burst of energy out before bed. And we pack it in. We make them stand up and like bow to each other at the end. It's hilarious. Anyway,
that's awesome, man. So they honor each other. So. Yeah,
and we try and tell them that kind of things. They're young, but they're not stupid.
Right.
So we try and tell them like, yeah, you guys wrestled. You respected each other. Stand up, respect your opponent, hug it out. Let's go. And
that's awesome, man.
Yeah, it's great.
Well, when I'm hearing you talk about that, one of the favorite stories and analogies that Jim Bergen is the pastor at our church, and he's an awesome man and somebody I look up to, but he's done a lot of mission trips to Africa. Cool. And he talks about the Maasai tribe. So like they did this men's series at our church, and it's called I Am That Man. That's when they shared my testimony. But he goes into depth on, I think it's at 13 years old, that to prepare for like your rite of passage, which is something that's pretty non-existent in the U.S. Unless it's you're part of a great men group and they're initiating this, and there's a few of those, but it's not something that we push in school. If you there's certain schools here in Boulder County that it's like, if you want to go to school and say I'm a dog, then that's what you are. It's crazy. It blows my mind.
Don't even get me started.
Yeah. But so the Maasai tribe at 13, they go out into the woods, and part of the rite of passage where it starts is they have to go, and I forgot what animal they have to kill, but they have to go and hunt and have a successful hunt. And then when they come back, they go through a series of different rite of passages. One of my favorite ones that I hear about is the elders have these like clubs, and they put them in a circle and they just whack them. And it's crazy, man. Like that, on the extreme side for sure. But then the last thing that they do is they sit them down, and they know it's coming. And so the Maasai men that are in the tribe that have made it through this, they all have a scar underneath their left eye. So they cut them from right here where the nose bone is all the way right here across the cheek, and they know it's coming. So when they sit them down to do that, it's an elder that does it. And if they flinch or show any sign of pain, they are casted out from the tribe. They are not welcome back. They are banished. And this is the part that I love. But they say, this threat's coming. This pain is coming. And if you run from it now, or you show fear that it's hurting you, then you will abandon yourself and your family. You will run from the next challenge that comes at you. So it's really cool the way that they put it together. And so like it's definitely on the extreme end, but I respect the hell out of it, because I think that I know we could use a lot more of rite of passage moments, not just for men, but for women, for people. Because I think we're all made up of somewhat of the same things, but we're all a little bit different. And I think that challenge and that heart is good. Like we've been humans, minus what's going on right now. And even now we're still great at surviving. Like we're still living, there's some bad cases, but at the same time, there's a lot more people living than dying for sure.
I couldn't agree.
I don't say that to be
Yeah, I couldn't agree anymore. I've never heard of that tribe before, but that's incredible. And you know what? Like,
it's awesome.
Just think about how powerful the connection is between the elders and between the young men who are coming up, and the camaraderie they have when they do go past that rite of passage. Truly becoming a man and all that kind of stuff is so powerful. And what do we get here, like in Canada? You turn 13 and you might start sprouting some armpit hair, and you feel uncomfortable in the change room and nothing happens, your voice starts going wonky and people make jokes about it.
Yeah.
It's like there's nothing fun about becoming a man. You know, the transition to becoming a man right now is not fun.
Sure.
And, you know, I would have loved to have someone step into my life and, you know, whack me with a club and then bring me into their club. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, we didn't have that. I just felt awkward. I would say 13, 14, 15 was, you know, I was a kid, so I was having fun. But if I look at it from a perspective of becoming a man and that kind of thing, it was awful. Like, I was one of those kids. I was pretty small. I went into grade 9, you know, 14 years old, 90 pounds wet. You know,
Wow.
I wasn't a big dude. And,
Yeah.
you know, I had chin hair before I had armpit hair. So I was in the change room, like, keeping my arms down, trying to squeeze my shirt on because, you know, kids would have armpit hair and I didn't have armpit hair.
Right.
And I didn't want them to see that. And, you know, it's an awkward time.
Yeah.
And no one talks about it. No one supports you, and you just kind of struggle through it.
Well, you bring up a good point because, like, one of the things that people have point out with me, they're like, Santino, you're a good dad. And I always appreciate the compliment. Like, yeah, thankful for that. I don't always walk in that, though. I don't always feel like that's true because I know my failures. I know me pretty well.
Yep.
But I think in the thing that we've been able to do is full transparency and vulnerability. And that's just the kind of person that I like. I admit when I'm wrong, and I don't always like that. And sometimes it comes out sideways, but for the most part, I'm very thankful when somebody has the ability to tell me that I'm wrong, or because I know for the most part, they care, because if they didn't care, why would they bring it up? There's a lot of people that probably have met me at a bad time in my life, and they walked away and said, oh, that dude's an a-hole or whatever. And, you know, it is what it is. But, like, we've had very transparent conversations with both Aiden and Jaron. And nowadays, like, you have to start the sex conversation way earlier, like, you know, masturbating, all that kind of stuff, all the things that not just boys, but girls deal with. And, like, for you to be in the shower and saying, like, hey, I got a, you know, peach fuzz on my face, but I don't have any, you know, anywhere else, and you're embarrassed by that. Well, that's just, you know, and I'm not trying to, like, speak in your life, but I'm just saying that I think a lot of people deal with that, and it literally is just an identifier that there's something missing at home with you and your dad.
Yeah, for
sure. And those are the things. So those are the things that I see in a lot of my friends, or I'm sorry, a lot of my son's friends that, like, we've kind of adopted in. Like, because I don't care if they're not my kid, but they're hanging out with my sons. I look at every single one of them like, just because you are my friends or my son's friend, like, I already have love for you in a way that I'm going to be hard on you. I'm going to try to coach you, even if you don't want to hear it. If I see there's certain things that we allow in our house and there's certain things we don't allow in our house, and you got to follow those rules. And it's crazy because a lot of the kids that have come over, like, their parents reach out and they're like, hey, thank you so much for being a mentor or whatever they want to call it to our boys. And it's like, well, we get so caught up as adults in, what do I need to do for my family? And the most important thing you could be doing for your family is investing in them, in coaching and teaching them how to be a good human being. Textbooks and all that stuff is great. Yeah. But, like, if they don't have character, then you just end up with a 28-year-old or 26, I don't know when you graduate college, I didn't go, but 25-year-old entitled person that feels like, hey, I got a master's degree and I'm not going to work for anything less. Or I went to college, I'm not going to scrub toilets, or whatever it is. Like, there's so much entitlement when, you know, I think when you go through, like, the Maasai tribe, they literally get humiliated. And humiliation is one of the best lessons. Like, when I was working at the gyms, I ran some boxing, kickboxing gyms, and there were some incredible fighters that were there. And I thought I knew how to fight just by doing the boxing stuff and, you know, having a great street fighting record. And I got my butt whooped at and it was, man, but, like, that's what I like. That's why I like archery. The humiliation and being humbled is one of the best things that you can do, as long as you can learn how to get up and walk away from it. I think the part where we fail is that people that do deal with humiliation, there's no one there to help pick them back up and say, hey, you know what? That's okay. It's okay that you fell. I think so many people now live and you fell and don't tell anybody about it. And that's where you get in trouble.
Yeah. I think it's really powerful what you were saying about about being mentors for not only your sons but for your sons' friends. That's extremely powerful. I had maybe one or two dads in my life that were like that growing up. And you don't forget it for sure. And at the time, you might sometimes think like, oh, like not everything's a lesson. Like, you don't need to make this into a coaching thing, but they will appreciate it later on. And just because you're coaching, you're mentoring, or keeping them honest, or whatever you're doing, doesn't mean you're not having fun. And they will certainly appreciate that when they're older. They'll look back and be like, man, like without him, I wouldn't be here, or whatever.
Yeah.
And another thing is what I try and tell dads when they want to be better, or they want to improve themselves, or even just men in general. I tell them, like, the step one is wanting to be a better man, or better person, or better husband. You're already on the right path, because there's a massive percentage of people that never even think about it. It never even comes up in their consciousness. They don't think about it. They don't want to be better. They want to blame everything else on everything on someone else. They want to blame the government for this and that. They're victims. They have victim mentalities. So when you come forth and you're like, oh, I want to be better, what do I do? It's like, well, you've done step one.
Yep.
And it's huge. And having any kind of mentor in your life, even at the age of 30, 40, whatever, you can have mentors at that age. And we need other men to be around us to hold us up, hold us accountable. Surround yourself with men that want to be better, and that'll build you up, that'll make you want to be even better. There's that classic saying, like, you're the sum of the, top 5 people that you hang around with, and they're the sums of the 5 people that hang around with. So, watch who you're hanging out with, and watch who the people you hang out with.
Yeah. And I think it's another thing too with what's happening with there's a lot of people that are doing soul searching right now and asking bigger questions. And what's interesting more than anything is that what's really inside of somebody right now is what's really coming out. So people live in fear, or they don't have a belief system or something like that set up. They tend to be angry or scared or whatever. And I think anger is just a product of fear, right? You're scared and you're fearful, so then it's easy to get mad. Definitely. Or whatever it is, or you're confused and frustrated, so it's easy to, that translates into getting upset. And people that are, hopeful and more optimistic, the reality of everything that we're dealing with right now is we can't control it. It's a moving target. And one of the things that I try to do, and I ruffle feathers a lot, but it's okay. I think that you have to challenge the guys too that have amazing platforms, because I've always told men that I've seen that have amazing platforms, guys that I'm friends with, guys that I'm maybe not friends with, but they want my advice on something or my perspective. And it's like, listen, man, you got an amazing influence. And the truth, like it could be just a God-given gift, because some guys just have that talent and they know how to captivate people. But it doesn't matter, whatever they do, good or bad, that's what they're going to influence. Like, they already have that microphone. They already have that audience that they're speaking out to. They're going to cause a ripple effect. And it's their choice to say, okay, well, is this going to be a good ripple effect or a bad ripple effect? So I always challenge those guys too, to say, hey, like, let's, and I go after leaders a lot. It's not that I'm intentionally doing it, but it's just kind of what lands on my lap most of the time. And for me, it's something that I encourage, not just guys that want to be better. I encourage the guys that are may not even think that they could be doing a better job. It's like, hey man, listen, you're funny, you're outgoing, people just love you, but you could do a better job in your messaging, because people need that. They want that mentorship. There's a reason, like you said earlier, like with women, they kind of look for projects, well, don't be a project. Like, don't waste your time doing that. And that's where having that discipline and saying, none of us are going to be saints, but at the same time, when you look at the next generation, and I see it firsthand, because my youngest son is 14 and he has so many friends, and some of them come over and I'm like, why would you hang out with this kid? What is going on? But then if you follow the breadcrumbs, it's easy to understand why those kids are dealing what they're dealing with. And that's something that I've always had a heart for. But I also try to be protectful over my sons too, because it's like, again, you are who you hang out with. And I'm trying to make sure that they're not falling into those things either. Yeah.
And, at a young age, like your son, maybe he is maybe he's the person that kid who, for lack of a better term, is a little bit lower on the pole right now. Maybe he's the one that kid needs to be hanging out with. You know what I mean? Like, maybe your son, he's surrounding himself with 9 great kids, and this other 10th kid, not so great, but maybe that's the one that needs to be part of his circle so that kid can rise up, You don't always want to be the bottom of your group. You want to have something to contribute as well. So maybe it's not such a bad thing. If he's walking around with 20 loser thugs who don't go to school and smoke dope all day, it might not be the best idea.
Right.
But if he's got one kid who has a good heart and all he needs is a good influence, well, luckily you've raised a son that fits the bill.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's a balance for sure, because a lot of these kids, they don't even know how to have a conversation with an adult.
Yeah.
And I call them out on it. And again, the intimidation look, or whatever you want to call it, the mean look that guys portray that I have, it's tough on these kids, but at the same time, like, hey man, like, I'm not here to hurt you. Like, it won't even be a competition, dude. But like that, I want to get to know you. I want to get to know you. I'm trying to like talk to you, and you're just looking down at the ground. It's like, if you're going to hang out with my son, you better get used to coming to my house and coming and saying hi to me. And, look up here, shake my hand, and all that kind of stuff, because we just want to get to know who you are. I want to know who's in my house.
Yeah.
And not only that, I want to know who has potential influence over my sons too, because that's my life. Right. And I only have, as a parent, like, I'll always be their dad, but I also realize that we've always, and Cassandra and I, we've always had the idea and the mentality that we're raising men. And when they're 18, they know that they have to go. Like, they're not going to be here. And obviously stuff can be circumstantial. They were doing something really great, they needed to crash or whatever it is, but they need to spread their wings and fly and learn about responsibility. And they're already starting to show that they're headed in the right direction. But at some point, once they start their own families, you do everything that you can, and they're going to make mistakes, but I want them to make mistakes. I don't want to put them in this little box to where, like, when I'm around, everything's perfect, and then when I'm gone, it falls apart. Like, then I failed them too. And what was it? We were watching a movie, Black Panther. My son's been going through the whole Avenger saga, like literally like in sequential order, but Black Panther one just came up. And have you seen that one?
No.
Okay, well, they're big Avenger guys, but you'll get there with the girls, I'm sure, here soon.
Yeah.
But they'll love Captain Marvel unless they've seen that one. But anyways, the dad tells his son in that movie, he goes, any man that hasn't prepared any man who hasn't prepared his kids for their father's death has failed as a father. And I never thought about that, because I always hear it from the opposite side, like preparing your kids for life.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, there's some of these super dads that are out there that when they pass away, if their kids weren't prepared for it, then they just feel like, what do I do? And they feel like they failed, and they go down this really, really dark road.
Yeah.
So that's kind of something that's been on my mind too. Like, I hope to live to be an old guy and see, grandchildren and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I always make it very clear to the boys, like, hey, tomorrow's not promised, not to any of us. And I just want to know that when I'm gone, that you guys can not only take care of yourselves, but if mom's around, you take care of mom, or whatever it is, that you guys can handle that. And that's always kind of been in the front windshield of how we operate, just trying to make sure that we're looking out for each other, we're taking care of each other, but we honor each other. And, we don't ever go to bed upset or any of those kind of things. Yep. Sometimes it's hard not to do that, when you have a really bad day, but at the same time, it's, there's not a moment that's promised to any of us. Man,
that's one thing that's I think has kept our marriage extremely strong is not going to bed angry. If there's one thing I can say too, it's, people think the Bible is stupid. They think it's outdated, all that kind of stuff. It couldn't be less true. The wisdom that's in that book is so relevant today. It's incredible. And that's one of them. And that's one thing that we keep dear. So no matter how big of a fight we get in, and we've been in bed laying there until midnight before, and you haven't said anything for 25 minutes, and we're both awake, but no one said anything because you're both cooling down, whatever. But there's one thing we take very seriously, and it's we never go to sleep angry at each other. Because if you do, you wake up the next day, you're not mad anymore because you've just slept for 7, 8, whatever, 6 hours, and you sweep it under the rug and you go on with your day, and no one says anything. And that's something that I watched growing up in my parents' relationship, was sweeping under the rug. You know, they have a big fight, separate, come back, nothing happened. It's like, well, something did happen, and it's going to surface again, and it's going to be ugly. So deal with it when it's at the forefront, and doing that with your kids, just as important. Just as important. You have to talk it out. You have to talk through it, and they're going to learn integrity from that. Yeah.
Well, I think also dealing with things when they come up. So you look at problems that have happened just across the world, but like the way that big divisions happen, usually it's, hey, I heard that you said something, and usually the initial offense is pretty small. It's pretty minimal, almost means nothing. Yep. And you see this happen all the time in like middle school and high school, and then all of a sudden you just grow. It's like the greasers versus the socias or whatever, gangs, and off nothing, this idea in years even create more separation and division, and now you're like worlds apart and you just want to kill each other. Or there's some people that literally operate that way when it wasn't addressed at the most smallest level, if that makes any sense in my analogy. That I think that there are so many people that it happens in marriages. They got mad about one thing, and then they had a bad attitude towards that person for a long time, and every little thing they did, they picked little things, and it just, it's just compounded, and now you have this huge problem that could have been solved over one little thing. And those are the things I always tell my sons. I tell it to myself, that if there is an issue, like I've gone to people, and even if I don't feel like I'm wrong, like, for screw my pride. Like, hey man, like if perception's reality. If you think that I wronged you, I'm sorry. I truly am, because I don't want to live my life. I don't want to look over my shoulder. I have lived my life at a younger age where I felt like I had to. You screw up enough, or you piss enough people off, you're watching your back, and that's a terrible way to live your life. Yeah. And again, we get ego, and we live for, if it's not the likes, it's somebody's approval or whatever the case is. And that's why in marriage, you have to take care of that too, because if you got, couples that go too long, like what does the Bible say? It says something about a lonely man or a bored man is a dangerous man. And you take away, certain things, and it just doesn't have to do with men. It's also women, that you take away affection or whatever, and then they go to a 9-to-5 job that they're spending 70% of their time with work people than even their own family. Stuff can happen. You allow an opportunity for something to slip in that probably shouldn't have been. And that's just, it's not even, it's just more than anything, it's human nature. It's how we're wired. We all want to feel love. We want to feel acceptance. We, feel, if we didn't want to feel that, then why would we try? Right? Why would you try to have a social media account? Why would you try to have a job? Why would you try to be a good parent? So all the things come back to is that there is some sort of level of affirmation that we all desire deep down, whether we want to admit it or not. And some are really good, some are really bad, but nonetheless, whatever it is that you're feeding is what's going to grow inside you. So you have to be very careful in what that is, and that just comes through experience, time, maturity. And I think the thing that we always try to do is like kind of get back to the drawing board or the whiteboard and see how messy it is, and just wipe it clean, and like reset goals and do all that kind of stuff. You can always change your choices.
Yeah, it's super important. You need to watch your relationships, and they take mending sometimes, and it sucks. I grew up in a bit of an angry home. Like I've got great parents and all that kind of stuff, so I'm not saying anything negative about them. But my dad's Portuguese. He's got that European anger. I mean, I'm sure you've seen it with your Italian and all that kind of good stuff. Yeah. And your Spanish as well. So you got a real good mix in there of great anger. So I grew up with a Portuguese family. We don't talk to my mom's family, so I look super white, but I grew up all around Portuguese. So our answer for everything is anger. Yeah. one of the first things my wife said when I brought her, we just started dating. I brought her for a family dinner at my grandpa's house, and we left, and she said, "Why is everyone yelling at each other all the time?" And I was like, "Yelling? What do you mean? Nobody was yelling at each other." And she genuinely thought everyone was just pissed off the whole time. And that's just how they talk.
Yep.
And they show love in weird ways. Like, man, they show love in weird ways. That's the only way to put it. It's weird.
Yeah.
But it's just different. But either way, I'm not even exactly sure where I was going with that. I just love talking about my family.
Yeah, no, I had a very similar thing with Krishana. She goes, "Man, why do you guys yell at each other?" I'm like, "That's just the way we talk."
Just normal.
But it also allowed me to see, though, like, yeah, I don't think I want to have conversations like that with my kids. So I think the best thing we can do is look at like whatever foundation has been built, and everyone has a different path. Everyone starts in different places. And just really try to understand, like, okay, I'm right here, and then where do I want to get to? That's what I love about the mountains. When you go on a hiking trip or you go on a hunting trip, that's exactly what it is. Can I get here? Can I accomplish this goal? And it's you against the mountain. And one of the guys that's a good mentor of mine that I've been talking to, he gave me this analogy. He goes, "Man, I was just praying about a couple things, and some of the stuff that I've seen that you go through over the last couple of years," because he knew about my job loss and all that and how hard that I took that, which was weird because normally I wouldn't care, but it like finally caught up to me. And he just said, "Man, you've been carrying a lot of stuff for a long time, and I just think you're exhausted, like emotionally." And I'm like, "You're absolutely right." So he's helped me on this new journey, but he goes, "I just want to tell you, man, you are the mountain and the rest is just weather." And man, that's something that I like literally wake up with every morning. Like those are like words that I say to myself, and that's exactly it. Like even what we're dealing with right now, like, and I'll tell you that, man, you're the mountain and the rest is just weather. So you have the opportunity to sit it out, wait it out, endure it, whatever it is, but it's just going to move. It's going to move on. Like, you have the option to crumble and fall or just stand your ground. And I think that's like one of the biggest things that a lot of people need to not just feel or hear, but believe that, this is just weather. I'm going to be here. I'm going to make it through this.
Yeah, I've been kind of careful about what I say to people because I think a lot of people are being hit kind of hard by this whole COVID thing. Honestly, my family and I, like my wife and I and our kids, we're flourishing. We've taken this as a whole different approach. And we've turned our focus on different things. We just had a month kind of locked in here together, and we've never had such a great time together as a family. Like we've never been closer. I've been off for 2 weeks before, and by the end of the 2 weeks, it's like I need to go back to work. We need to separate a little bit. This time, totally different, and I think that's part of that is this journey I've been on with, what started as Mindset Bootcamp and is now Men of Bronze. I've had these incredible conversations with a bunch of guys, and I've been able to kind of self-reflect and put those things back into my life, gotten back into training with weights, just trying to be a little more open and honest. We've been back into reading scripture together in our evenings, and, it's making a difference in our lives, all these things. So yeah. Try and improve and make the most of every situation. And one thing I wanted to touch on as well, you were talking about, kind of improving as a father and that sort of thing. And one thing I try and keep in mind is, as a generational man, we should be trying to get better with each generation. So, my grandfather was who he is. And, my dad saw what that was and took the good and the bad and tried to make a better father for me. And, I grew up and had my father, and I've tried to take the good and the bad from my father and make a better father out of that for my kids. And if you have that mentality, it can be extremely powerful. And that self-reflection and that kind of thing to, keep that in mind and truly be a better man and better father and better husband. It's 100% doable. It just takes effort, but you see tons of guys who they just live their life, and they drink pints all the time. They go with the boys. They fall into that that classic, meme of person where it's, you got to get away from the wife and all this kind of stuff and all this, ball and chain and all that kind of stuff. And I hate that kind of mentality.
Well, part of it is just, I think part of it's just guys trying to be guys, and they've just learned the wrong way, right? It's bad teaching, or incorrect teaching, and then most of it is just that people don't want to admit that when they go home that there's stuff that they have to face, so they'd rather run away from it.
Yeah.
And as much as the mentality that I had of a coward when I tried taking my life because I didn't want to face the music at the time, it's the same thing. Whether you want to admit it, like, and guys might get offended. Well, who does this guy think he is? Well, you know what? I'm a guy that's been through a lot of shit.
Yeah.
And I've been a guy, but you know what? Like, at the end of the day, when I just don't care anymore. Like I in the sense of, I don't care what other people think. I used to, and I've carried that for a long time. And really where it started is the guy that stood up in our wedding. And I think there was a lot of people that wanted me to fail. And that was it. Whether that's true or not, in my mind, that's exactly what I thought.
Yep.
So I put so much value in friendships over family. I would say that I put work and time above my wife and my kids. So I've failed, man. And people say, dude, you're busting your butt and you're doing all this. No, man, I've failed because I've done, and I'm calling it failure because I put other priorities in front of my family and I justified it with, I'm just doing everything I can to get them to a better level. But then as you mature and you grow through things and you figure out, well, I don't have to do this, or I don't have to do that, like more, sometimes we think more is less, and that's not really true. I think more is just more, more problems, more money, all that kind of stuff. Yep. And you have to figure it out. Like, what is it that you really want? What are you willing to sacrifice? And are you willing to do the work, right? Like, you look at some of these amazing athletes that they don't let anything get in the way of their training. It's absolutely amazing. But they're like, why don't we treat our families that way? Why don't we treat ourselves that way? And it's because it's way easier to say, hey, I'm going to go out with the boys and have a pint. And like, hey, this is just what guys do, or it is what it is. I don't want to say I get picked on, but I think a lot of people, they say it's awesome, but like the fact, and then I have a lot of guys who are like, man, I go hunting so I can get away from my family. I'm like, I go hunting so I can continue to be with my family, because that's what we do. Now, they don't make it on every trip, and Cassandra's definitely not, she's not trying to live it and breathe it the way that I do, but that's fine. Like, she gets to enjoy it, and she appreciates the way that I do it. And she's now like able to watch me do certain things that in the past she wasn't able to, because I was so focused on coaching her on this. But we have that opportunity to do a lot of things together in the field, but then we also have the opportunity to break away. So all I'm meaning by that is, like, we have found balance around it to where it works for all of us. And the boys, they're, Aiden, he's all into the fishing stuff, and he fishes more than he hunts, which is fine. Initially I was a little bummed out, but then Jaron like is like hunting more than he fishes, but they do it all. And it's another way for us to connect. And man, being able to get your family out there, it kind of sucks in the beginning because you got to teach them all, and they're not going to be at your level. But then once you bring them there, man, it's awesome. We go on a camping trip, and people that watch us set up, it's like everyone's dialed. Everybody has a job, and we work as like a unit, and it's incredible. And that's how, like, when we hunt, same thing. I don't have to do the coaching as much. I'm just there literally watching and enjoying and reaping what I've sowed, which in this case, it's fantastic. So I think that more guys it was hard, and it wasn't always fun. It would have been easier to just go drink with the boys, which I did that. I had those moments. Sure. But I just I woke up one day and said, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to have that type of attitude anymore.
Yeah, your family has to be your team. And that's one of the things that we try and pound into our girls. Again, they're 2 and 3, but if I say to Addie, Addie, what does teamwork do? She says, makes the dream work. And I say, and why are we a team? She says, because we're family. She's 3 years old, and she'll recite that back. And
that's awesome.
Having that mentality has gotten us over, how kids are, like, they fight over everything. And I'll just tell her, like, Addie, like, you should be sharing with Ava. Why should you be sharing? And she said, well, we're family. So yeah, you should be sharing because you're family. And you guys are trying to play a game, right? Yeah. Well, you have a dream for the game. Well, what does teamwork do? Make the dream work. And that's crucial. So those are the kind of things that we're trying to stick in these girls. And, we're going to try for another kid too. So maybe I'll get a boy too, and I'll be able to raise a man too, but we'll see what happens.
You go.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, with balance and that kind of thing. Balance is huge for me, discipline, all that kind of stuff. I think we've rounded well over an hour here, so we should kind of start rounding down a little bit.
Sure. But, yeah. No, it's fun,
for
man.
Hours as always. But one thing I wanted to mention too was I watched your Montana archery elk hunt video.
Yeah.
It's 7 minutes long, and it's powerful.
Thanks, man.
I loved it.
I appreciate it. It was for me doing I've been in production in the outdoor space for a while. It literally took me longer to drive to Montana and home than it did for me to hunt. I killed my bull on my first day. And that was a special invite from my buddy Mark Garcia, and he has some lease land up there, and I drew the tag on my first go around, which again, one of those things that was just meant to be.
Nice.
But that place was Disneyland. There was elk. It was a completely different environment. And it was also 95 degrees the entire time that we're there. So I'm used to 30-degree mornings here in Colorado on a high of maybe 65, 70 in archery season, and it was I could have literally been in shorts the whole time. When I was there, it was awesome. So I appreciate that you liked it. It was really hard to try to tell that story with only a day worth of footage. Yeah. But my buddy Mike Stevens did a good job putting all that together. So
yeah, man, you got a lot out. I mean, like the things I noticed was the joy you had when you guys saw the bulls for the first time. You guys are whispering, but I could tell you guys just want to hug each other. You guys were so stoked. Yeah. And then, you were smiling while swatting flies away. Oh, there's so many flies up here, but you got this big smile on your face. You're just so cloud nine the whole time. And then, the connection you had with the animal when you did get the kill. And, you were kind of a kid in a candy shop, really, to be totally honest. You were just so ecstatic. And then, the last thing I noticed was your outright thankfulness to God for the animal, for the opportunity, for everything. And you made a point of not only saying that, but you made a point of putting that in your 7-minute video.
Thanks, man.
I thought that was pretty powerful.
Well, I really appreciate you saying that. I think through hunting shows, there's a lot of great producers out there. And, I know a lot of these guys, and they become really good friends. And I think that when people watch a hunt, they think it's just somebody out there doing the trophy thing, and that's just become an overused word. But at the end of the day, we do it because it's hard and we love it. Is it cheaper to go to the grocery store? Absolutely. But what people don't even understand, I think even here in Colorado, the percentage is so low even for gun hunters to actually harvest an animal. Even on private, I've guided. I was a guide for a few years, and I guided elk hunters and mule deer hunters, and it's not always 100%. It's not like you just walk up and shoot an animal. Now, granted, there are places like that, but that's a pretty small number compared to the guys that are getting out there, buying a tag, going on public land, going on private land, and really trying to find an animal, and not only that, harvest them and do it in the best way possible. That bull, I was able to get 2 arrows in him. He thought the first, when he was raking the tree, he thought he poked himself with his antler, and I've seen that when I've guided people, and they get a shot off on an animal, and then he walked away, and the camera angle, we couldn't spend too much time on the cut, but he walked away maybe 20 yards, bedded down, and went to sleep. And didn't no death kicks, nothing like that, nothing gruesome, but it was super peaceful and just a surreal moment. But that's something that I'm working for it right now. Last year, it took me 26 days to take a bull here in Colorado on public land. Wow. I wasn't anticipating that, but I had the whole month, and I was willing to hold out for a mature bull, and I was able to accomplish my goal. But I think that I'm working for that moment again right now, for whatever tags I draw or whatever it is. And obviously COVID, I was supposed to go to Canada, up to Saskatoon for another bear hunt. Cool. But that hasn't happened because right now everything's just on hold. Yeah. So I hope I can get up there, but it is something that a lot of guys work really, really hard for. It's a lifestyle for most of us. And regardless what people see in the reaction the excitement. I think that's just human nature. Like people really care about what they're doing, and like they bust their butt to get that meat off the mountain, get it in a freezer and feed their family with it. Do we need to do it? I would say, yeah, for sure, because it's something that it's not even just, I hate when people call it a sport. It's really a lifestyle. It's heritage. It's history. And it's something way more important than that. But then the dollars in buying tags, what that does for public areas for people to go and enjoy, hiking trails and all that, it does so much. So without getting on the political rant, even though I did, I love hunting. I think that even if people don't do it, I think they should respect it, just like we have to respect whatever people, their belief system is or whatever. And I never try to push anything on anybody other than like, hey, we're doing something good here. And it's not as much as people think it's all about just putting an animal on the ground and pumping their fists in the air. It's so much more than that. And if that's all they get, then they've missed it for sure.
I fully agree. We went to South Africa in 2016, just before we had Adeline, and it was a family trip with Hannah's parents, myself, her brother, her sister, and Jord. He actually went on a guided hunt when he was in South Africa. He thought, I like hunting, one in a lifetime opportunity, we'll go for it. So he took down a springbok, and he has the head here in Almont now hanging on his wall, and it's super awesome. And the fantastic thing that people don't realize is, if we didn't have these game reserves, there would be no animals in South Africa. They'd be all gone, like literally extinct. Yeah. And people think, game hunting is so bad, it's evil, you're paying money to take these animals, and white people this, white people that, all this kind of stuff. You know how it is, you've heard it all. But, these people paying for these tags to have these adventures are keeping these animals alive. They keep these animals alive. They keep them existing. And, a local village got all the meat. The guy who owns the property, he has a couple local people that work for him. They do all the skinning. He pays them well, all this kind of stuff. All the meat goes back to their families. Nothing gets wasted. The head gets shipped to Canada. Done. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And, what an opportunity for us, or for George, to experience when we were in a different continent, right? Like, it's fantastic.
For sure.
So,
yeah.
Anyway, I think it's a great place for us to wrap up. We've been talking for a while. We could go on forever. I loved having you on.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll do it again sometime, man, 'cause it was fantastic. And I think I still have a bunch of points that we didn't even get to touch on. So I'll bring you back on sometime, and we'll talk again.
Yeah, well, anytime, first off, I'm honored, thankful. I'm looking forward to seeing what other guests you get on and what other men that are out there. And just always love being a sounding board or whatever it is. I'm around. So thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
And before I let you go to any social media plugs, your website, your Instagram, that kind of thing, shout them out.
Yeah, so pretty much if you just go to my Instagram, it's Santino_Mantino, and I have a link in my bio that you can see my website, you can see what we do, but we got a bunch of different initiatives that we were going to launch in 2020, and everything's kind of getting pushed back a little bit, but that's okay. So you can stay tuned on there, and hopefully, some of your listeners that hear what we have going on, when they look at our content and they see what we have out there, they'll kind of have a little bit more of a voice and an idea of who I am, what I do, and all the reasoning behind it. But sure. I would tell all the men and anyone that's listening is you are the mountain and the rest is just weather.
Incredible, man. I love it. Fantastic line to finish up. I appreciate you so much, man. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, man. Have a good night.
Yep, you too.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. Remember to visit our website at www.menofbronze.ca. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and share the show with your friends and family. This was the Men of Bronze podcast. Be worth remembering.